On Ilkley Moor Without a Hat by J.R. Dullard, as channeled through Bob Lever. Beauty is only skin deep, but ugly lies to the bone. Beauty dies and fades away, but ugly holds its own. Anonymous. A truism, and far be it from this storyteller to assert that every truism must be wholly accurate. And yet, if there were no truth in them, they wouldn't be trotted out and oft repeated, would they? Nor would the application of them ring so horribly true on occasions such as in the tale I am about to relate. Or would it? Set against the stunning backdrop of Ilkley Moor stood Ben Ridding Parsonage. Ben Ridding being a satellite village to the north of the town of Ilkley, where the verdant green moor rolls and falls steeply towards it, and in the shadow of two millstone grit rock climbing areas, Rocky Valley and Ilkley Quarry, that loom above it. The attractive Georgian residence stood proudly in its shadow, was then home to local parson, Emmanuel Snowes, his wife Edith, and their only daughter, Mary Jane. This was from 1882 onwards, and shortly after he took up the position, it became a place of pilgrimage to the many would-be suitors of the Reverend's beauteous but impudent sole offspring. On that fateful evening of October 31st, the parson's wife sat in her bath chair beside the parlour fire. Her right leg was elevated to ease the pressure on a bandaged ankle that had resulted from a recent tumble. She focused on her needlework in an attempt to distract herself from the nagging pain. At which point there came further distraction in the form of a ghostly apparition appearing in the doorway, now floating towards her. It was her daughter, Mary Jane. "There is no need to wait up, Mamma. I intend to be frightfully late," Mary Jane chirruped. The elderly matron glanced up disapprovingly before continuing to sew. "It cannot be considered at all seemly that you should attend a Halloween costume ball in full funeral mourning garb, Mary Jane." She frowned and reached up to pinch the bridge of her nose, as if she felt a headache coming on. "There are times, child, when I could swear that your capacity for insensitivity is nothing short of breathtaking." "But, Mamma," Mary Jane rejoined disarmingly, "if our own dear Queen Victoria is an enthusiast at such activities, who are we, not to partake in the celebrations? The Queen can hardly be regarded as a repressed prude," she added pointedly, "and her Halloween parties are legendary." "You deliberately misunderstand my intention. I very much doubt our good Queen is familiar with the tragic circumstances that have so recently befallen the late Mr. Percy Wackett." Mary Jane shrugged. "And what was Mr. Wackett to us, Mamma?" "None to me. But you can be in no doubt that the poor fellow would not have met his gruesome and untimely demise if it had not been for your machinations." "Oh, Mamma, how can you say such a thing? The coroner himself concluded that Mr. Wackett caught his death of cold on Ilkley Moor. How could I be held responsible for his ill-advised decision to venture on to Ilkley Moor without a hat?" "Save your protestations for the local gossips, Mary Jane. If he did lose his wits along with his hat, it was you who drove him to it by leading him to believe that you approved of his attentions and then rejecting him so roundly as soon as Colonel Basil Ratcliffe returned from overseas. Have you so little concern for your reputation? What will people say if you attend this event? And if I don't, they will immediately attribute it to my caring abnormally for Mr. Wackett, and they will think that there was some sort of understanding between us. You dissemble, my dear. You forget that as chaperone, I myself witnessed your smiles and encouragement. Tell me, now, did Mr. Wackett ask for your hand, only to be rebuffed on that terrible night he courted you upon the wild and windy moor? Mary Jane almost blushed. And what if he did? As if I would consider a farmer in possession of only a small holding. Whatever could he have been thinking? As I understand it, his holding was anything but small. It is just that a larger endowment presented itself. Mother, Mary Jane protested, I have but one life to live. Should I not favour quantity over quality? Aha, crowed her mother. And so, foully cast aside, he took himself off to that barren and unforgiving moor, only to lay down and die in despair. Mary Jane, you cannot show your face in public without shame. Nobody knows that he proposed, and precisely because I do go to the ball, everyone will conclude that he did no such thing. I do not wish it to be supposed that he did. His family, of course, must have been aware. They will see your name among with those present at the assembly. I imagine their grief would distract their attentions from pursuing the society columns in the Ilkley Gazette to ascertain who is attending the Halloween ball at Ratcliffe Hall. She snapped back. Not to be dissuaded in her accusations, the matron continued. His terrible death lies at your door. How can you have a heart, Mary Jane? Please reconsider. I must attend. Colonel Ratcliffe has already reserved several dancers and sent a coach to collect me. I dare not disappoint. She paused. I am frightfully sorry for Mr. Wackett's misguided affections, mother dear, but I can hardly be expected to sacrifice myself as a charity to save a crackpot from his matrimonial delusions. Well, I have made you aware of my feelings. I am sure that if your father, Parson Snowes, was present, he would be even firmer in his condemnation. Then it's just as well that church business has kept him in Bradford overnight, and that your unfortunate accident will prevent you from being chaperone. She paused briefly. Mamma, please, do not let us part on bad terms. I must go. Oh, just do as you always do. Do as you please. Exasperated, her mother dismissed her with a wave of her hand. Mary Jane turned then and entered the hallway, humming to herself, as she placed a cape around her shoulders and a bonnet upon her head. Peering into the hall mirror to admire her own reflection, she noted that funeral black did rather make her face look pale and wan, so pinched her cheeks to add a blush of colour. Tottering to the door on elevated heels, she opened it to be met by torrential sheets of rain. Taking an umbrella from the hall stand, she opened it and, holding it aloft, waited in the portico to be led to the cab. But the hunched figure of the coachman sat motionless on his platform, with his back to her, giving her no indication that he was aware of her presence or had any intention of assisting. So she dashed to the door of the cab, opened it, clambered up the step and climbed in. Once seated inside, she tapped the roof of the cabin with the handle of her brolly to indicate the journey should commence. To her great consternation and alarm, however, with a loud crack of the whip, the coach set off at breakneck speed down the long, sweeping driveway, through the gated entrance, and instead of turning right towards Ilkley and Ratcliffe Hall, it turned left, and uphill towards the wily, windy Moor and Ilkley Quarry, the site of the famous Hanging Stone Rocks. Mary Jane found herself tossed violently to and fro within the confines of the cabin, and no amount of hammering upon the roof elicited a response. The coach sped on over the uneven stony ground. She clamped her eyes tight shut and braced herself back against the red leather upholstery, praying for the torment to end. Then, amidst a sudden lull in the storm, she heard a tapping at the window, and opening her eyes, turned to see the monstrous visage on the other side of the glass, at which point she thought she would faint, but was not to be so fortunate. The face that peered in was ghastly to behold. The once handsome countenance, illuminated by moonlight, was revealed as a ruin. The worm-ridden skin pulled taut over the skull, yellow teeth exposed in a leering approximation of a smile, as the voice cried, "Mary Jane, it's me, your Percy. I've come home. I'm so cold. Let me in at your window." "Never!" she cried in response. The incessant pummeling of bony fists then shattered the window pane. An arm with tattered sleeve reached through, and long skeletal fingers grasped at the ribbons on her bonnet, tugging her towards the shattered glass. She fought free, and the arm retreated. She screamed and screamed, but only succeeded in rupturing her vocal cords. The strangulated sounds fully consumed by the storm that raged without. A forceful gust of wind whipped throughout the entire interior. It increased exponentially, plucked at her cape, tore the bonnet from her head and flung it aside. It clutched at her carefully constructed coiffure, wrenched the combs that held it in place and completely disarranged it. Ringlets loosened were lashed across her face, blinding her as she was hurled back and forth and side to side with exceeding force. The road continued to rise steeply above the valley, and then, with a sudden seismic jolt, the coach wheels having run over a heap of stones on the rutted earth, the cabin was violently upset. And as the coach door flew open, Mary Jane found herself flung unceremoniously out into the night, landing on her head alongside the roadside as the coach sped on into the far distance. She lay as silent as a stone. Eventually regaining her senses, with no idea how long she had lain prostrate upon the sodden earth, she found her throat constricted, so that she could not cry for help. Not that it mattered, for there was no one to hear. The night was deathly cold, and rain that had now turned to sleet revived her as it drove down incessantly. She clambered to her feet and scanned the horizon for any sign of lights or life, but to no avail. The only landmark clearly visible were the Cow and Calf, a large rock formation consisting of an outcrop and boulder, illuminated by the full moon, where she had once been courted by the deceased Mr. Wucket. and for want of any form of shelter, she raised her skirts and splashed across the muddy terrain as quickly as her ill-suited dancing slippers could carry her. Shelter was the priority. She was soaked through and chilled to the bone. She felt her way around the surface of the largest of the two stones, made of millstone grit, until she found a cleft in the rock, and trembling squeezed a way in, out of the unremitting sleet, thankful to escape the deluge. But her relief was to be short-lived. Despite the shelter provided, a cold rush of air passed over her entire length, and numbness began to creep throughout her extremities. Her lips quivered, and her eyes widened, and then as she heard a voice upon the wind. "I've come back, cruel Mary Jane," it began hoarsely, but firmly, "back to exact my revenge." Again it was undoubtedly the voice of Percy Wackett calling out from beyond the grave. Of that she had no doubt. He continued, "You appear to have lost your bonnet, my love, my dearie. Aren't you afraid that you'll catch your death of cold?" And as the voice proceeded, the wind became even more fierce. It raged about her. She cringed and shrank back as far as she could into the sandstone crevice. "Oh, it gets dark, it gets lonely on the other side. You do know you are going to lose the fight, don't you, Mary Jane? I've come back to put things right, to grab your soul away. You know that, don't you? You know it's me, your Percy." She opened her mouth to scream, but could only croak. He laughed. "First the worms will come and eat you up." A skeletal hand reached in towards her. "No!" she mouthed impotently, and tried then to bolt out of her hiding place, but found she was stuck, trapped, unable to escape, unable to cry out, as bony fingers wrapped themselves around her throat. "And then the ducks will come and eat the worms." The fingers tightened with such force that her eyes popped out of her head, literally. But Mary Jane was not about to die due to the cold or via strangulation. No, she would die of unbridled, unmitigated fright. Skeletal remains were not discovered until the following April, by a hiker intent on finding shelter themselves on the rain-swept moor. All flesh and identifying markers had been stripped from the remains, save for a dance card, stuffed in the bodice of a tattered black dress, which proved to belong to one of Mary Jane Snow's, and listing a number of dancers reserved for Colonel Basil Ratcliffe, though curiously they had each been struck through with what appeared to be red ink. It was the recently betrothed Colonel Ratcliffe who directed County Chief Constable Reg Thrumpton to Parson Snow's abode, and thus he was charged with the unfortunate task of informing the family of the gruesome discovery. A maid-servant showed him into the dining room just as Parson Snow's and his wife were finishing their Sunday roast. The timing was fortunate, as they would otherwise undoubtedly have lost their appetite, though both would later remark that the roast duck had been especially delicious.